my name is Diana Thornton. I'm 34 years old, and for the last 6 years, my entire life revolved around one single goal: owning a home that was truly mine. I worked late shifts, skipped vacations, and saved every dollar I could possibly spare. So when the day finally arrived and I closed on a beautiful 4-bedroom house, I was over the moon. No kidding, it felt like a dream finally coming true. The house had a huge backyard, a cozy fireplace, and enough space for me to finally breathe and enjoy the life I'd worked so hard to build. I invited my parents over for dinner, pretending it was just a casual family get-together, because I wanted to surprise them with the biggest news of my life. In my mind, I pictured my mom tearing up with pride, while my dad wrapped me in a big hug, telling me how proud he was of everything I'd accomplished. But the moment they stepped through the front door, my mother's eyes immediately scanned the spacious entryway. Instead of excitement, her expression darkened. My father stood beside her with his arms folded, staring up at the high ceilings like he'd just walked into a crime scene. "Diana," my mother said sharply, her voice cold enough to chill the entire room. "Whose house is this?" With a huge smile, I pulled out my key ring and held up the shiny brass key. "It's mine, Mom. I bought it. Every single one of the 4 bedrooms." I expected cheers. Instead, my father's face turned bright red. His jaw tightened so hard it looked like his teeth might crack. Before I could even ask what was wrong, my mother completely lost it. "How could you buy a 4-bedroom house without telling us?" she shouted, her voice echoing through the empty living room. "Do you have any idea what you've just ruined?" I stood there frozen, the brass key suddenly feeling heavy in my hand. "Ruined? Mom, I bought a house. I bought a house. I've been saving for 6 years. Why are you yelling at me?" I asked, my voice trembling with disbelief. My father took an aggressive step forward, jabbing his finger straight at my chest. "Because you're supposed to talk to us first," he snapped. "You don't just go out and make a purchase this huge without running it by your family, Diana. A 4-bedroom house for one person? Seriously? That's ridiculous." It wasn't some spur-of-the-moment decision, I shot back, tears of frustration burning my eyes. "I planned for this for 6 years, and it's my money. Why on earth would I need your permission to buy my own home?" My mother let out a cold, sarcastic laugh and threw both hands into the air. "Because your sister is getting evicted, Diana. That's why." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. My older sister, Maya, and her husband, Greg, had been struggling for years. Not because life had treated them unfairly, but because Greg couldn't keep a job for more than a couple of months, and Maya expected everyone else to bail them out whenever things fell apart. They had 3 kids, a mountain of debt, and absolutely zero savings. "Maya and Greg's lease ends next month," my father said, his tone shifting from anger to pure entitlement. "They have nowhere else to go. We've been planning this for the last 3 months. We were going to help you find a place big enough so Maya, Greg, and the kids could move in with you." He shook his head in frustration. "But instead, you went ahead and bought this house in your name only." I stared at both of them, completely stunned. The shock quickly turned into a cold anger rising inside my chest. "Wait, you planned for 5 people to move into my house without even asking me first?" "Their family, Diana," my mother fired back, folding her arms tightly across her chest. "What else were you planning to do with 4 bedrooms? Live like a queen while your sister and her children end up homeless? You don't need all that space just for yourself." "Greg hasn't kept a steady job in 3 years, I replied firmly, refusing to back down. "Maya refuses to cut back on her spending. And every single time someone helps them, they take complete advantage of it. I'm not turning my very first home into a rent-free shelter for a grown man who won't even bother getting a real job." My father's expression darkened instantly. "So that's it," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "You're really going to let your own nieces and nephews suffer because of your pride? We raised you to care about this family, Diana. Right now, you're acting selfish, cold-hearted, and unbelievably arrogant." I took a deep breath, walked toward the front door, and pulled it open. I'm 34 years old, I said calmly but firmly. I earned every brick of this house through years of hard work, overtime, and sacrifice. I'm not paying for Maya's bad decisions. And I'm definitely not going to let either of you guilt-trip me inside my own home. No way. You'll regret this, my mother hissed, her eyes blazing with anger as she stormed past me and disappeared into the night. You're turning your back on your own blood, Diana. Trust me, this family won't forget it. I quietly locked the front door behind them, my hands trembling as reality finally sank in. Deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. Over the next 48 hours, my phone turned into a complete battlefield. It started with a non-stop flood of text messages from Maya. Every message was nastier than the one before. How could you do this to my kids? You've got 4 empty bedrooms sitting there while my children are about to be homeless. You're unbelievable, Diana. You've become a monster. Then Greg started calling. When I refused to answer, he left a passive-aggressive voicemail saying how deeply disappointed he was. That I was letting my ego come before family. Yeah, give me a break. I already knew that arguing with them would only pour gasoline on the fire. Then came the flying monkeys. Aunts, uncles, distant cousins. People I hadn't spoken to in months suddenly remembered I existed. One after another, they reached out, eager to lecture me about family values and tell me what I should do with my own house. My Aunt Linda even called me while I was at work. For nearly 20 minutes, she went on about the importance of family, asking how I could possibly sleep peacefully in such a large house, while my own sister was struggling. That conversation led to the most infuriating discovery of all. Later that evening, during a brief phone call with my cousin Sarah, the entire truth finally came out. My heart honestly breaks for you, Sarah said gently. Your mom told everyone at Sunday dinner last month that you were buying a big house specifically so Maya and her family could move in. I froze. What? She told everyone you're single, you don't need that much space, and that it was your responsibility as a daughter to give them a place to live. My blood ran ice cold. Without my knowledge or my permission. My parents had already handed over my future, my independence, and every sacrifice I'd made over the past 6 years. To them, my life savings weren't mine. They treated them like a shared family bank account. 3 days later, it was my grandmother's 85th birthday celebration at one of our favorite local restaurants. For a moment, I seriously considered staying home just to avoid the inevitable drama. But I loved my grandmother far too much to let my parents ruin her special day for me. So I showed up wearing my best smile, determined to stay calm and keep the peace. For the first hour, things were awkward but manageable. My parents acted as though I didn't exist. Maya kept shooting daggers at me from across the room every time she reached for her drink. I stayed close to Grandma, chatting with her about her beautiful garden, laughing at her stories, and doing my best to enjoy the afternoon despite the tension hanging in the air. I stayed close to Grandma, talking with her about her garden and enjoying the afternoon as much as I could. But the peaceful atmosphere didn't last. Just as dessert was being served, my father picked up his fork and tapped it against his glass. Clink, clink, clink. The entire room fell silent. Before we wrapped things up, my dad announced, his voice carrying across the dining room. There's something that's tearing this family apart, and it needs to be addressed. My stomach instantly dropped. Every pair of eyes in the room shifted toward me. As most of you already know, my father continued, placing a comforting arm around a tearful Maya. Maya and her family are facing an impossible housing situation. Meanwhile, Diana has just bought herself a huge 4-bedroom house. My mother stepped forward, wearing a heartbreaking expression that looked convincing. If you didn't know it was completely fake. We begged Diana to open her heart and let her own family stay in those empty bedrooms, she said, shaking her head sadly. But she refused. She'd rather let her own nieces and nephew end up on the street than share the blessings she's been given. A wave of shocked gasps spread around the table. Maya buried her face in a napkin and started sobbing dramatically. Greg lowered his head and slowly shook it, pretending to be heartbroken. It was obvious what they were doing. They had cornered me in front of nearly 20 relatives, hoping public shame would pressure me into giving them exactly what they wanted. Wrong move. I slowly stood from my chair. Every eye in the restaurant stayed locked on me. The silence felt almost unbearable. Still, I refused to look away. I refused to let them intimidate me. "Since you've decided to turn my personal finances into tonight's entertainment," I said calmly, my voice echoing clearly through the room, "then let's talk about what actually happened." I turned and looked directly at Maya and Greg. "Over the last 4 years, I've given the two of you more than $12,000 to help with rent, utility bills, groceries, and whatever emergency came up next." I paused. "So tell me, Greg, where exactly did all that money go? Did it help you build a stable future? Or did it disappear into video games, takeout food, and excuse after excuse?" Greg's face instantly turned bright red. He opened his mouth, clearly desperate to defend himself. I didn't give him the chance. "And Mom, Dad," I slowly turned toward them, "you promised my house to Maya without ever asking me. Because you already knew Greg wasn't willing to work. You didn't want 5 extra people moving into your own house. So you expected me to work 60 hours a week just to finance their lifestyle. You expected me to sacrifice everything I'd built, so they wouldn't have to change a thing." A heavy silence settled over the room. One by one, my relatives looked from my furious parents to Greg's guilty expression. You could actually see the mood in the room changing. For the first time all afternoon, people were finally seeing the truth. Suddenly, Grandma slammed her teacup onto its saucer with a sharp crack. That echoed through the silent room. "That's enough." Her voice trembled with anger as she slowly stood up, fixing my parents and Maya with a glare so fierce that nobody dared say a word. "Diana worked herself to the bone for that house," Grandma said, her voice firm despite her age. "How dare you try to humiliate her at my birthday party just to cover up your own failures?" She pointed directly at Maya and Greg. "You two need to grow up. You've spent years expecting everyone else to rescue you instead of taking responsibility for your own lives." Then she turned toward my parents. "And the two of you should be ashamed of yourselves. You raised Diana to work hard, save her money, and build a future. Now you're punishing her because she actually succeeded. You tried to give away something that never belonged to you. What kind of parents do that?" The room fell completely silent. No one defended them. No one argued. For the first time, everyone finally saw exactly what had been happening. My parents stood there speechless. Maya stared down at the floor. Greg couldn't even look anyone in the eye. Humiliated and completely exposed, the 4 of them quietly gathered their belongings and walked out of the restaurant without another word. The moment they left, the tension in the room disappeared. Several relatives came over to hug me. Others apologized for believing the lies they'd been told. Even Sarah squeezed my hand and whispered, "I'm really sorry. I had no idea things were this bad." Over the next few weeks, the silence from my parents and Maya turned out to be the greatest gift they could have given me. I set firm boundaries. I limited contact with my parents. I blocked Maya and Greg on social media and refused to answer any phone calls. That started with guilt trips, demands, or emotional manipulation. Without my savings to fall back on anymore, Maya and Greg finally had to face reality. Greg got a full-time job at a local warehouse. They moved into a modest 2-bedroom apartment that actually fit their budget. Funny how people suddenly figure things out when the free ride finally ends. As for me, I spent my evenings painting the walls of my beautiful 4-bedroom home, picking out comfortable furniture, adding warm lighting, and filling every room with healthy green plants. Every time I walked through my peaceful home after a long day at work, I felt something no one could ever take away from me. Pride. Not because the house was big, but because I'd earned every single inch of it through years of sacrifice, discipline, and determination. That experience taught me one lesson I'll never forget. Standing up for yourself isn't selfish. Sometimes it's absolutely necessary. Blood may make you relatives, but respect, honesty, and mutual support are what truly make people family. Now, I'd love to hear from you. If you were in my shoes, what would you have done? Would you have let your family move in? Or would you have stood your ground? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel and stick around for more unforgettable stories. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.